Hey everyone, this is Lucas for LA's Toys. As you know, I'm going to be talking more about my comic in the upcoming months. I'm going to try to keep that on Sundays here. So we're going to call it Sword for Hire Sundays. And for the first episode, I'm actually passing the torch to another creator here on YouTube. His name is Donald Osborne, Mr. Super Oz. We had time to chat about his Indiegogo book, BC Brute. Please take a listen and watch our interview. It is a long one, so strap in. Thanks for checking us out. And like, share, subscribe, and we're going to toss it over to the interview right now. The owner, creator, and writer of Gamble Comics and BC Brute.
Currently
Donald, glad to have you
here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you are in the middle of crowdfunding Gamble Comics' next comic, BC Brute.
Yes.
But this isn't your first come around with the with crowdfunding.
So it's my first floppy comic. It's my first traditional sized, no spine comic book. But previously, I released a 68-page graphic novel, had a pretty spine. It's called Everlasting Survivors. That 68-page book is still available. I mean, cover A is sold out, but some of the additional covers are still available at gamblecomics.com. It was quite the experience. The first try at getting a product off the ground, I had a lot of feedback from people saying, "Oh, $20 is a lot to put into something I don't know," which was one of the reasons why I went the smaller, cheaper route for BC Brute. And also, as you know, the less pages there are, the cheaper it is to produce the book. And so hopefully it takes off, success is had, and more books or issues can come. Then eventually the graphic novel can be formed as time goes on.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed whenever I checked out your Indiegogo is like BC Brute is 18 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason you went 18 instead of 20 or 22 or 24?
Well, it's funny. So I wrote the story as 17 pages because I wanted it to be exactly a quarter of the size of my first graphic novel. It was due to the artist, Aaron Johnson, being so excited and engrossed in the action that there ended up being an additional page, which is for the best because when printing the book, the page number either needed to go up or I had to find a bunch of filler stuff, which, filler's not going to be terribly hard. I'm going to advertise the next product or project in the book, so that's a page added to the mix. I'm going to advertise for the website, gamblecomics.com. So again, it's not like I have nothing to put in there. And then the additional page actually brought it up to, or will bring it up to 20 printed pages, 18 pages of the story. But the reason I wrote the story as 17 pages is so that it was precisely a quarter of the Everlasting Survivors size.
Gotcha. Yeah, and one thing about BC Brute, this is your technical second, this is your third crowdfund, but technically your second project.
Yes.
It's completely different from Everlasting Survivors. Is it? I know at one point we've known each other for, I think like 15 years now.
Something like that.
Which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yes.
But is it at one point, you're kind of shopping around like the idea of doing like your own little mini universe? Is this going to be connected at all?
Yeah, so the way I put it, every story I write is in the known world, my known world. Every story that I write, while it might not be happening at the same day or time, it is within the same within the confines of the same world that happens within my head. And so, yes, BC Brute is happening in a pre-biblical flood era, but that timeline is a part of the world that the Everlasting Survivors characters reside within.
Right. So you mentioned it being pre-biblical flood. Are you drawing inspiration from any movies or comics? Because obviously Jason Aaron and R.M. Guerra did The God Damned, which is also pre-biblical flood storytelling as well.
I just felt like it was a fun, or what I would call it, an easy sandbox to play in, right? Because there's so little continuity if you will,
Right.
in that era. And so, and it's also, it felt like a good cheat, because if I do something outlandish or over the top, we know that things are going to be wiped away within the story that people understand. And so it just, like I said, it was just an easy place to enter and not have to really overly stress about the facts.
Specifics.
Yeah, specific. There you go.
Right. I mean, that's one reason, like, obviously, the people on the channel now know, like, I'm doing a comic called Sword for Hire. It's set in the 15th century. I don't have to worry about, and it's fantasy, so you don't have to worry about, is this accurate, or, especially for the, flooded times. Like, no one knows what was going on then.
Yeah, and I always use the approach, personally, that I'd rather be fun than accurate. I find things being engaging more important than being perfect.
Right. Yeah. I had a thought and I lost it. No, so BC Brute currently running on Indiegogo. Is there a reason why you went with Indiegogo over like Kickstarter or Zoop, or there's a new one called Fund My Comic?
While I follow the creator of Fund My Comic on the internet, it was only the reason I used Indiegogo is because I already had the account made from the prior launches, and so it was simpler. More or less, it was just simpler. I have had people ask if I'm willing to use Kickstarter, and I'm like, if I have to, I'll do it, because I want the product to be known by as many people as humanly possible. So I'm not saying I won't, but it was just simpler this way to start with.
Right.
Yeah, so that's it, really. It's no different than why I put out content on YouTube as opposed to some other thing. I already have an account, so it's like it's simpler.
Yeah, you already know the algorithm. You already know the structure of everything. But so BC Brute currently in crowdfunding. Right now, I think you're at what, 20% of your goal?
Yeah, it's in that range.
Yeah. So we know that it is it's Mattathias, right?
Mattathias, yes.
Mattathias Priest fighting monsters. Do you have an overarching villain introduced in this, or is it going to be like kind of monster of the week for the first couple issues? Or what's going on?
So in the first issue, it's the introduction of the hero via I'm going to call him village elder for simplicity. So all the townspeople are worried because of said monsters. He tells them, "Be not afraid," and then we cut to the introduction of Mattathias, and so it is all action all the time for issue 1. We don't the plan for overarching villain doesn't really come into place until issue 2, because this $5 floppy comic is designed to whet the appetite, get you to understand what he's good at, his motivations, and the goal is for people to be so engrossed that they want more, because I really have confidence in the story and think that once people know and read it, they'll understand how fun it is. And you had said earlier, or asked earlier, if I had inspiration. The way I look at it, my primary inspiration for this character is Hercules: The Legendary Journey and He-Man: The Masters of the Universe, basically the 2002 version. Those were my sort of templates, if you will. The way I wanted this to be able to be enjoyed, because I felt both of those were very approachable, easy to digest, and in the case of Masters of the Universe, it was very beautifully executed. I mean, no knock on Hercules; it was cheap for the time, but it's still.
It was a '90s live action show with Greek gods. It kind of needed a extended budget, but the 2002 Masters show was it's slept on.
Yes,
And you can see, of course, you originally designed BC Mathathias, and now you said it's Aaron Johnson.
Yeah, that's the artist's name is Aaron Johnson.
Yeah, and he's interpreting it. Obviously I've seen bits and pieces here and there, and looks like he's doing a killer job. And February 30th is calling it. He was callers on one of the callers on Everlasting Survivors.
Yeah, he is. If I have my way, he'll be the only person who ever colors anything that I ever do. Now, granted, if he blows up and I can't afford him anymore, so be it. But I love the fact that his colors marry the world together. Whether it's Jeff Hicks art from the primary or for the majority of Everlasting Survivors, or Nick Crook's art that finished out that story, or now Aaron, everything that February colors it pops off the page. It's because originally Aaron's goal was to pencil, ink, and color, and I don't know. I probably have shown you his finished pages, but at some point during the process last year, I was like, I don't dislike what you do, but if you would be willing, I'd like to see if you would be okay with February coloring it, because it would certainly expedite the process. And he was open to it. And when we got the first pages back, he was like, yeah, that's the way we're going out, because it took it up to a whole new level of professionalism, I feel like.
Right. Well, and I'm trying to think. We go back to the memory banks. But we talked about Aaron before. This is his first comic work, isn't it?
That is.
Did I hear that right?
Correct. So, my wife has said that I'm running a Big Brother Big Sister program for artists, and I get them off and running, and then they go and succeed on their own. But yeah, this will be his first book, but I know for a fact it won't be his last book, because right after the final page of BC Brute got finished, he began working on our summertime project, which is called The Uniter and the Unhinged. It is totally different than either book that has already been finished. And again, it's going to be nuts. It's so funny. So I had only met Aaron not last Thanksgiving, but the Thanksgiving prior, because a mutual friend of ours kept telling me, he was like, "Oh, you should meet this guy. He does great work." But I'm sure you know this bit, when you get told, "Oh, you need to meet my artist friend," all that really means is, I want you to pay my artist friend. And I told our mutual friend, I was like, "I ain't got money for that right now, buddy." And he's like, "Oh, just trust me." And so I meet his friend, and we talk, and it's fine. It's fine. But I don't have a story finished at the time that we met, so I just gave him Everlasting Survivors. I was like, give me a solo piece for each one and a team shot. It was twofold, really. It was seeing how he does, and then also it was three. So seeing his interpretation of the characters, seeing how fast he is, and then, yeah, just seeing if he had what it took to stick with it. The next time we get together, I see where his mind is going, and immediately I'm like, I'm gonna be out a lot of money. Because each piece was distinct, and also I saw so much promise within it. And so in our third meeting is when I pitched him on 8 stories. I said, you tell me what you want, and I'll finish one of these 8 stories. I just gave him basically a sentence worth of what to expect, roughly, and he picked BC Brute first, and then he picked United and Unhinged second, because of how it has a very duality overtone to the whole story. And he was like, yeah, I want the fantasy adventure, and then the duality of nature. And so those were the 2 stories that I had finished first, which was the thing that made me entertained by it, is I never expected him to pick either of those. So our mutual friend, his name's Chris, he said, "Oh, you'll like Aaron. He was in the Army too," because he knew that I was a veteran, am. And so I just assumed he was going to pick in my mind, my Captain America-like character, because it was something we had in common. But when I pitched him on that book, he was like, "That's fine, but I don't need a a solo GI Joe or a modernized Captain America story. We'll do that down the line. I was like, all right, cool. And so then we end up going a totally different direction than I had been prepared for him to choose in the fantasy realm of, you know, man fights monster. And so that's why I really got so engrossed in those older shows of, you know, the 90s or then the early 2000s, because I had to get my head in the right space to write the story, because one of our longtime friends is the person I envision when I think of Mattathias. So originally his name was Maximus. When we were volleying ideas back and forth, like, I don't know, a decade ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started thinking about the character, I was like, man, Black Bolt's brother's name is Maximus. The lead character in Gladiator is Maximus. Even a horse in Tangled is named Maximus. Like, too many Maximuses out here. So that's what led to the name change to Mattathias, which was very distinct and not overly saturated within popular culture.
Yeah. I need to take a breath.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the last name Priest, obviously you're going with the before flood times. Is so obviously you're a huge wrestling fan. Is that from wrestling, or is that from just going the more biblical route?
Well, it's funny. So it actually came from the fact that when I saw the name Mattathias, it was the name of a priest, and so I thought, oh, I'll just take it the other way around. Instead of priest Mattathias, I was like, oh, to be Mattathias priest. So I just inverted the whatever, the concept. It's not a title, it's a last name.
Right.
For simplicity more than anything else. And, you know, like you said, we see it in wrestling. It's just a recognizable surname, basically. And
yeah.
So yeah, it was just fun, simple. It was like, oh, that, and it flowed well too. So I was like, it served multiple functions.
Yeah, and you talk about like getting in that headspace to write, this action adventure story of man versus monsters. It's one thing that like a lot of people don't realize when you're writing, you do. It's not just writing a book or writing a comic book or a script. It is investing yourself into the process, whether it be, well, I'm writing a sci-fi story, so I need to look at Star Trek, I need to look at this, I need to read these comics, I need to just do some research. There's a whole process that goes into it. Was there anything else that went into the VC Brute creation as far as deep dives or process stuff?
Like I said, and didn't elaborate on, so I'm glad you asked. Mattathias is in my mind a close friend of mine whose name is also Donald, and he's the reason I see him as this heroic, larger than life guy is there was a time in my life when my home didn't feel welcoming, and he just let me sleep at his house because he knew that I didn't feel comfortable going home. Or another example is my battery dies and he's like 40 minutes away, and I'm just complaining about hard times, and he's like, oh, I'm on my way. I'm like, I didn't ask you for help. He's like, I know, but you don't have to. And so that kind of generosity, that kind of forthright nature really helps to stay focused on who and what this character is about. And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm sure that you've gathered this over the time that we've known each other, but it's one of the reasons why I always just love striking up a conversation with random people, because you never know when something that seems benign will become foundational. And
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I love getting to know people, and sometimes even just your perception of them can spark something. And then later, when you get to know them on a deeper level, it's like, oh my goodness, either I was very right or I was very wrong. But still, yeah, I don't know. It's I'm always formulating ideas So I don't know. It's just who I am. Like I was talking to somebody during the first launch of Everlasting Survivors, and I told her, I was like, even as far back as I can recall when I was using action figures inside of a wrestling ring, it wasn't just, smash, 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 slam, whatever. It was good versus evil. It was the 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 scheme of what was the bad guy trying to get across, and how did the good guy come out on top. And so it just, I don't know, it almost comes naturally, I feel like, to just have these things in mind.
Yeah, and sometimes, just telling stories, like, some people are just meant to do that. Whether it be with action figures or with words, sometimes it's just getting that creative outlet out.
Yeah.
But you also,
wrestling.
Go ahead.
When I was wrestling, it was so fulfilling to be able to tell the beginning to end of the story in a match. And it wasn't until I left wrestling, or, whatever, got out of putting on the show, that I felt like I had to write comics, because, and it obviously didn't have to be comics, maybe it was some other thing, but I had to do something to get the story out. And so, yeah, I don't know. The end.
But you also mentioned, when is this meeting going to be? I think you just word foundational. Like, what goes from a random meeting to becoming a friendship or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know when we went to this was like 2014, 2015 Cincinnati Comic Expo, and you met Jeff Hicks.
Oh yeah.
Who became your collaborator on Everlasting Survivors. He's it's not a secret that he's contributing to Brute, right? It's a secret what the variant looks like.
So
we can cut that part out if I need to.
It's not a secret. The only reason I wrote mystery cover is because at the time I didn't know what the cover was going to look like, because it hadn't been drawn. So it wasn't mystery in the grand scheme. It was just I don't have the visual to show at the time, which I think you now know that it's done, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you showed it to me the other night. It was great.
Oh, thank you. I also found it quite enjoyable, and I love his enthusiasm for all of the projects that are coming from Gamble Comics, because while he's no longer, whatever, we're not directly working together, we're always cheerleading for one another, because we were so connected in the beginning to everything that came or began from one another. Like, I don't know if you know this or not, but had it not been for him asking, or he didn't even ask, he told me, he was like, hey, I'm going to put this ad page in the back of his trade paperback that he had crowdfunded, advertising for Everlasting Survivors. And at the same time that I was flattered by it, I was also convicted by it. I was like, well, it means something that you believe that it's coming, because he literally put a blurb that said, this is a book that I, worked on, and I'm going to try and help get it out, or, whatever, encourage for it to be finished. But also I was like, well, I have no choice at this point, because it's one thing not to finish a project when nobody knows about it, but it's a totally different thing to not finish a product when many, many people know that it was in the process. And so there's a chance, had he not done that, that maybe the book would have never gotten done, because I was very worried for years that I was like, well, I guess it'll be nothing. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to put this ad out in the back of the book saying that this is coming. And so I was like, well, now there's no choice. And I don't know, I just like that. It's just one of those moments, like you'll see it in a TV show or a movie, where it's that pivotal moment where the whole story changed. And that's what I love about it. But no, it is no secret that Jeff is participating or collaborating with BC Brute by doing the C cover. And yeah, I don't know. I appreciate him. And I mean, realistically, I appreciate anybody such as yourself, such as Jeff, anybody who's willing to let me get the word out. And thank you very much for this. And, it just, I often get the feedback about Everlasting Survivors, and I highly suspect it'll be similar with BC Brute, that people want more, and I want to be able to give more. It's just the only way that things will be able to come easily is if the project can get funded, because, as you know, it's not easy or cheap to make quality product.
No, and you kind of targeted a couple things that I want to kind of jump off of it. You're not collaborating with Jeff anymore, but he's obviously still willing to help you out. He's willing to put in word in for you, and I think a lot of times in these creative fields we see each other as not necessarily adversaries, but competition. We're competition.
Yeah.
And I have, you have a combined like 100-some pages now between Everlasting Survivors and BC Brute that's done.
Yeah.
I'm on 12, but one of the artists that I worked with, he's not doing the main book that I want to do, but he was on Reddit. He was like, hey, I'm looking for short work. I could easily be like, oh, we're not working together anymore. I don't need to talk to him, but he's a good dude. So I was like, hey man, I vouch for this guy. He does good work. It's just little things, just making sure that obviously you don't want to burn bridges, but we're all trying to have the same goal. We're all trying to make really cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when we're talking about, making quality product, first off, I don't know how long it took Jeff or Aaron to get pages back to you. The comic process is long, grueling, and expensive. It's just bottom line. As someone who myself, I have no real artistic talent. I am paying these artists out of pocket. It is pricey. Not to say they don't do good work. That's just the reality of it. Like it is a march uphill to get these books done.
I understand completely. So I've actually forced myself from the beginning of the year until today to draw something every day because of how daunting a task it is to get books done. I was like, well, if I can get better in 2025 at drawing, period, then perhaps this will help expedite the creation of stories. Now, granted, I still want to pay Aaron. I want every artist conceptually possible. Like if I hit the lottery, I'm not one of these people who are like, oh, I'm going to go sip margaritas or Mai Tais or whatever and hang out on the beach. No, my goal is to find every artist on the planet and be like, I would like to pay you now, because
right.
My goal in life isn't to not work. It's just to solely work in the thing that I do and don't get paid for.
Yeah, comics, we both know, long process, expensive process, but it is a passion project, and that's the most important thing.
100%.
These are the things that we are passionate about.
If you didn't care about these things, like you and me specifically, but anybody who's independently trying to make something happen, if you don't have a love for it, then you'll never get to the place where you finish it, because it's so. If you don't love it, then it's easier to quit than it is to push forward. And
right.
Yeah, no, I agree that you have to have the heart for it.
Of course.
Yeah, I was so excited when you bestowed the knowledge upon me that you were getting back in the game, because for years I would pop in and be like, where you at, and I would have been fine in the grand scheme of things if you didn't, but like it was always like, man, I know that you got it in you. And then when you started sharing the pages, I was like, oh man, this is awesome. It's exactly what I've been wanting.
Dun, dun, dun.
Exactly.
My personal ash can. Yeah, and it's one of those things where, as someone who for a long time didn't have much money to pay anyone, and I'm not going to ask anyone to work for free.
Of course.
It was not necessarily right place, right time, but I was right place financially, and I reached out to a couple different artists, and luckily they agreed to work with me. And it was one of those things. I was sitting at home last year, and I love action figures, I love toys, I love comics, but nothing was really cutting it at the time. I was like, there is something missing in my life, and I had basically been stalking comic collabs on Reddit for artists anyway. So I said, you know what? I said, this is the year that I do something. And it just so happened that at the time, like I had already asked one artist for a character design, Rita Kalula, who absolutely nailed it. Love his style. He nailed the character designs. But I was getting married, so I had to kind of push everything back. And by the time it came back to being like, oh, I really want to do something, the Mad Cave Talent Hunt had just started, and there was an anthology to submit to. So I was able to shake off some cobwebs. I wasn't accepted either, so that sucks. But just by getting back and writing those scripts, it made me feel like I needed to do more. And by the end of I think so, the first one was finished late November, Past the Arms, and the next Sword for Hire, it was finished about 2 weeks ago during the big blizzard around here.
Yep.
So I have 12 pages done. I'm working with a great artist, Jacopo Callisti, who is immensely talented, and we're going to do a full 24-page single issue that will hopefully be kickstarted next year.
Yes.
Because, once again, comics are marching uphill and expensive.
Absolutely, yeah. I was rejected by Image years ago, and it's what led to it was what led to the launch of Gamble Comics, both the website and just the concept of, well, I'm gonna bet on myself and not hold out for some angel to come in and save the day. Like I don't need the big eye or the black horse or whatever it is. It's just gonna do it myself.
Yeah, and we are fortunate to live in a time where, if we were doing this in the 60s and 70s, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, true.
But we can submit digitally to Image, or we can just say, screw it, I want to own, obviously Image, you own everything. But, screw it, I want to crowdfund this, or I'm gonna put my own money into it, and then I'm just gonna go to conventions and sell it. There's so many different ways to get your comic out there in people's hands.
I've got to talk about going to cons because obviously you and I and friends went to the Cincinnati Comic Expo. It's where we met Jeff Hicks, who did the majority of Everlasting Survivors. But when he moved back to Ohio last year, wait, was it last year? Year before last. Sorry, time is so crazy.
You're fine.
So he moved back to Ohio in 2023, and he said, "Hey, are you going to the expo?" And I was like, well, he asked if I was setting up, and I was like, I couldn't afford a table. He's like, just set up at my table. I already bought one. He bought a table back when he lived in LA because he was just gonna come home anyway, see his mom and catch up with family. But when he moved back to the area, he was like, "Oh, just set up at my table," and it was the most rewarding experience because, as you know from both working at and going to cons, it is a location where you are surrounded by people that love what you love, that want to see people succeed, and I'll be honest, I only ever want to be behind the table from here on out. After doing it one time, because I like being in the crowd to some degree, but there's also that whole, it's no different than the county fair to me, where it's like, there are a lot of people, and I don't know all of them, and I don't like when we get acquainted, but being on the backside of the table, it's just so, it's the right way. It is the correct way because people come for the characters, for the story, and you're able to engage in that one-to-one, which is, in my opinion, where I thrive, because it took me a lot of videos on YouTube before I was comfortable just talking to myself. Nowadays, I'm okay enough at it that I can do it, but I still prefer having an actual conversation as opposed to talking to my phone. But there's just a different dynamic to it. And I feel the same way about cons, where that is, and we've also set up at comic shops, and those are very, very similar in concept, because both the setup at the convention and the setup at the comic shop, they're both in a place with the people that it was all made for. Like, to some degree, the story is made for me. In some ways, the story is made for you. But in reality, the story is made for everyone else. Because without them, the audience, the fan, the person who is just being introduced to these people, heroes or villains, whatever the characters, then without them, then it's just it's an expensive hobby. But when they come into the fold, it becomes a dream realized. Because even without making back the money or actually making a profit, the dream still gets realized just by people reading, enjoying, and appreciating the story. Because would I like to break even or make a profit someday? Yes. But it means so much just for people to have and enjoy the story, because I think I get emotional every time somebody's like, "Oh, I read your story and I really liked it." Every time I get that feedback, I'm just like, "That's what it's about."
It's a great feeling, and as someone who I only have a handful of pages, but like talking to Kayla, she knows that I'll tell random people on the street, like, "Hey, I'm writing a comic book. I have a comic book coming out. You want to see pages?" It's just a cool feeling in general, and then also you get that validation whenever you hand someone. I hand someone this ash can, they read the 4 pages that are in it, and they're like, "Oh man, that was pretty cool. I'd like to see more." Yeah, there's something fulfilling in that. And we can't. They say write the story that you want to read, but it's not just about us. I want to write a story that other people want to check out too.
So, with that concept, I wrote Everlasting Survivors as the story I wanted to read, but that's not what BC Brute was for me. When I wrote it almost exclusively to be the story that Aaron, the artist, wanted to draw. So we had multiple sit downs of just being. I was like, "What is it that's going to make you happy?" And as soon as because the more I could excite him, then the more I knew that would fuel him to work. And also, actually, let me ask before I say this: have you seen the interior pages, or have you only seen the promotional material?
I think so far I've only seen promotional, maybe some line art, but I don't think I've seen a finished page yet.
Okay. So I couldn't remember. I knew I sent all of the pages to Donald Price because I'm excited, but I'll have
and you're excited, and it's based off him.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, of course you gotta see it, and so but yeah, I'll need to send you, because, like I said, knowing what he wanted made it easier for me to write it in a way that would excite him, and by him being happy, it then made, so far, everybody who's seen the pages excited to read it. Because when I show you the pages, the words aren't on there yet, because the letterer, he got my 68 page book done in, like, I'm gonna say less than 5 days. So I know he's gonna get 18 pages done in no time flat. So I'm not rushing to send those off.
Yeah. Speaking of which, are you using letter squids again?
Yeah, I saw no reason not to. I shot him an email. I said, "Hey, are you available?" And he was like, "Yeah, same price." And I was like, "Hey, that's a great deal, since it's been 4 years and everything's gone up." So when the price didn't increase, I was like, "Deal." He's a good dude. Very private. That's why he uses the whatever the name. But yeah, he does great work. He is the reason Dom from Everlasting Survivors dialogue balloons are in blue. I didn't ask for that, but because the character's blue, he put the dialogue in blue, and it just helped it pop. And he was able to accentuate every thing that I requested. So there's a scene in the graphic novel where Reese goes to a nightclub to see a local band perform. An actual, real life band playing real songs that you can listen to on iTunes or SoundCloud, or, probably just YouTube too. But Tomorrow Lives, a band that was created where we're from, and I own their album. And so I was listening to it a lot, so I hit up the guy who wrote the songs, lead singer, whatever, and I was like, "Hey, can I use your band / music in this book, and he gave me the green light. Thought it was complimentary because he knew I was a big fan. So my point was, Letter Squids. I scripted how that I wanted the music to appear on the page, and he made it pop. So yeah, I'm gonna use him again because, like I said, him and February really are going to be the glue that binds each Gamble Comics story together.
Well, like letters, like one thing I've learned. So the second Sword for Hire story was lettered by James Reed, who's Reed Letters. He's done work for Avatar and a bunch of different publishers. Nice guy. He got my pages back freaking lickety split. Like it was no problem for him to knock it out. But you realize just how much they add once you go from your black and white page or your color page with nothing on it to fully lettered. Like it really does breathe life into it in a different way than the art and coloring does.
100%. I will say this. I always find it compelling if the art itself can tell the story. Now, it won't be the full story because the words aren't there, but if you can tell what's happening without the words, then I think that's a sign of a quality artist because they are able to. It's like if you muted the TV, right? And then you can still basically figure out what's going on. It's like that's how I feel about the comic page without the words. Now, the words or the unmuted TV bring it all together. But when you can tell what's happening without them, I was like, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, Donald, we are getting long in the tooth here. Is there anything else you would like to add during the interview?
I would just like to say thank you for always being there to listen to me rant about what's going on in my head and allowing me the time to share that with your followers, your subscribers, your fan base. I would love for you to be on my channel when your book is ready to be promoted, if you would be willing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, once again, I will tell random people on the street that I'm doing comics. So obviously, I'd love to come on your channel. And honestly, for those of you who don't know, we live about 2.5, 3 hours away from each other.
Yeah, something.
We went to college together, but we don't get to see each other in person. One reason this has gone so long is we don't get to see each other in person very often. So it's good to just catch up and talk comics because we don't get to do that often.
100%. Yeah. I mean, when / if you're interested, you're welcome on any time. But that is the specific thing that I won't take no for an answer. I was like, we gotta let the people know. Gotta let the people know.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anybody would like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, obviously it's free. It's Mr. Super Oz. And anybody who watches this that wants to help bring BC Brute over the top with the funding goal, I'll send you a link for the campaign, and you can put it wherever is good.
Yeah, once we're done here, we'll have the link to Indiegogo in the show details and the show bio, whatever you want to call it. It'll be in the link, or it'll be in the bio. I can't talk. We've been talking too long. It'll be in the show details for people to follow and check it out. And it's nothing just to be like, hey man, let's talk about comics for a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, but once more, that's Donald Osborne, owner of Gamble Comics, writer and creator of BC Brute, Everlasting Survivors. Go follow him on YouTube at Mr. Super Oz. Instagram is Gamble Comics, and he is launched on Indiegogo right now. How many days left do we have?
When is this going live?
Hopefully tomorrow. I'm gonna try to get just a little bit of editing done on it.
I think that means that there'll be 38 days tomorrow.
Okay. So we're a little bit over 30 days left to complete funding. We're at 20% now, and we want to see a big push.
Yeah.
We want to see BC Brute come down.
I have hope that by being on Jeff's channel, I can convince his top 1% to want the book because he has such a large base that all I need is less than 1%. But because I love the NXT EC3, I'm gonna use the top 1% as
Right.
as the push, because if I can get just 1% of his people, then everything's golden. But yeah, any support is helpful because the more it gets backed, the easier, the faster, the smoother the trip will be to get additional stories from the character, the world, everything with BC Brute.
Right.
But as I always say, no matter what it raises, Gamble Comics isn't stopping because I'm crazy, and so that's why we're already working on the next project. It's just if/when this succeeds, that means that we'll work toward making the next issue of it.
Well, like we said, comics are at the very core of it. They are passion projects. We are telling these stories because we need to tell them, and there's stuff that we want to see out in the world.
Absolutely, yeah. It's I can't wait to send you the pages because I think you're gonna love it. I know personally, it's some of the best stuff, and it's crazy because I love my first project, but this just feels, because Everlasting Survivors, I'm sorry for rambling, but it was
you're fine.
It was a Frankenstein's monster of a book. It was 2 colorists, 2 artists. It was me editing together every conceivable panel that I had and figuring out a way to make it work because the book had to come out. BC Brute is the opposite.
Right.
It is not hodgepodge. It's not Frankenstein. It is exactly, completely and utterly what it was intended to be from the start. Page 1 to page 18 are exactly what the vision was meant to be. And that's the way I want it from here on out, because it's awesome.
No, trust me, I get it. Sword for Hire, when it eventually comes out, is going to be 36 pages, but only 24 of that is going to be the full issue. The other 12 pages will come from the prior work with the other artists. Not quite a Frankenstein's monster, almost more like a little anthology.
Yes.
But I completely understand trying to piece together something for production.
Yes.
It's just part of the process. Donald, stay on for a minute. I'm gonna stop recording. It's kind of it does this thing where it kind of uploads things.
You're good.
But we'll go ahead and give the outro here. Once more, that's Donald Osborne for Gamble Comics. Follow him, Mr. Super Oz, on YouTube, Gamble Comics on Instagram, and check out the link for his Indiegogo for BC Brute in the show details here today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next round.